ਦੇਖ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ। ਤੇ ਇਹ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ ਇਹ ਪ੍ਰਪੋਜ਼ਲ ਹੈ। ਇਸ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਸਾਡੀ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਆਪਾਂ ਸਾਰੀ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਵੇਅਰ ਹੋ ਕੇ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕੰਸਲਟੇਸ਼ਨ ਪ੍ਰੋਸੈਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪਣਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਯੋਗਦਾਨ ਪਾਈਏ। ਐਕਸਟੈਂਡਡ ਫੈਮਿਲੀ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਸਿਚੁਏਸ਼ਨ ਹੈ ਫॉर एग्जांपल, ਇਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਕੀ ਹੋਊਗਾ 2 ਹਫ਼ਤਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਰਬਸ਼ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕਿੰਨਾ ਕੁ ਭਰ ਜਾਊਗਾ। ਲਾਰਜਰ ਦੈਨ 240 ਲੀਟਰ ਦਾ ਬਿਨ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਲਈ ਇਨਫ ਹੋਊਗਾ? would that be enough? ਸੋ ਇਹ ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਤੱਕ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ। 10,000 ਟਨ ਤੱਕ ਲੈਂਡ ਫਿਲ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈ ਉਹ 12 ਸਾਲਾਂ ਦੇ ਪੱਖੋਂ ਪ੍ਰਪੋਜ਼ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕੀਤੀ ਆ। 32,000 ਟਨ ਪਰ ਈਅਰ ਲੈਂਡ ਫਿਲ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈ ਇੱਥੇ ਤੱਕ ਪਹੁੰਚਦੀ ਹੈ। ਸੋ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਡਿਸਕਸ਼ਨਾਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ ਰੱਖਾਂਗੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਸਟੂਡੀਓਜ਼ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਲਾਈਵ ਇਸ ਟਾਈਮ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੇਖ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ। ਸੋ ਇਹ ਇੰਗਲਿਸ਼ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਸੀਂ ਇੰਟਰਵਿਊ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ। ਰੇਡੀਓ ਸਪਾਈਸ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ। ਵੈਲਕਮ Daniel and Marshal.
Sat Sri Akal.
Sat Sri Akal. And Happy New Year. This is your first interview, Daniel, for this year, and being a counsellor and being active in our community. How was your break?
Well, my break was wonderful because it's always good to sleep in once or twice a year.
Yep.
But it was also good to spend time and to have my in-laws, Russell and Barb, coming up from Christchurch to spend time with us. Love having the family there, but there's important work to carry on as we commence 2025.
Indeed. So Daniel, you are involved in these proposals when they are discussed on the Auckland Council tables. So tell us more about, by just explaining what this transition is about. What's the proposal about?
Well, by a majority of, I think, 14 votes to 4.
Yeah.
And I was in the minority.
Yeah.
Council has agreed in principle to establish a trial fortnightly rubbish collection. So there will be probably around about 10,000 households that would be identified across the Auckland region for a trial period, probably in the region of a year. Where their rubbish wouldn't be collected each week, it'd be collected every fortnight. Highly contentious, probably very disruptive to families, particularly those larger families who are going to struggle to cope. And I believe that trial is being conceived at a time when there's no consensus in favour of having a trial in the first place.
Indeed.
So what's going to happen now, Tej, is that we're going to have an election this year for our civic local government representatives. But in the ward that I and Marshal are standing for, we will also put the fortnightly rubbish collection option on the ballot paper, because we will campaign against the move to fortnightly, because we favour the retention of the weekly service.
Indeed. Daniel, I guess living in South Auckland, it seems to be a cultural divide on this issue, if I'm just to put it, that there are smaller size families across as you go from Mount Wellington upwards in many ways, traditionally, and the moment you start to come into South Auckland, this is how it is. We've got larger families. I mean, in Otara, in Papatoe, we're living in a larger communal setup. So this could play havoc.
Which is one of the reasons why I was so surprised that I was the only South Auckland councillor that voted to oppose the fortnightly trial, because South Auckland is home to a very large number of large families.
Indeed.
And look, my wife and I, we are 2 people in our household. Could we cope with fortnightly? Yes, we could, but it's not about us. It's about ensuring that everybody has the convenience they need to deal with their rubbish. And that's what we're hearing on the doorsteps. That's what I'm hearing. That's what Marshal is hearing. That's what the Action Team canvassers are hearing. and this is going to be an issue.
Yep. Just looking at it from, say, the bigger picture perspective, what are the goals behind, this tour? What are we trying to achieve in the long run?
Look, I think that one of the things that my good colleagues who favour a move to fortnightly are trying to achieve is that they want people to become better stewards of their rubbish. They want to reduce the amount of rubbish to landfill. A zero waste outcome is a wonderful aspiration. But back here in the real world, we have to deal with rubbish, and we can't just magic it away. With the best will in the world, people receive their goods, their services, their food, what have you, and there is packaging, and there will be waste that is generated from all the things that we have and consume in our lives. In an ideal world, of course, I'd love to live in a world which has zero waste, but the reality is that that's not how the world is.
Indeed.
And I strongly support sanitary communities, sanitary homes, sanitary sections. I want streets to be clean and tidy and beautiful, and I want people to have quiet enjoyment, and that's what they should have in their lives, and that's what we'll be campaigning for.
Marshal, ਗੱਲ ਕੈਂਪੇਨ ਦੀ ਆਪਾਂ ਕਰੀਏ ਤੇ ਨੈਚੁਰਲੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਡੋਰ ਨੌਕ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ ਇਸ ਟਾਈਮ ਪੈਨਰੀਵਾ ਵਾਰਡ ਦੇ ਪੱਖੋਂ, ਸੋ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੀ ਫੀਡਬੈਕ ਆ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਜਦੋਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇਹ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਤੱਕ ਪਹੁੰਚਾਉਂਦੇ? ਮੇਰੇ ਖਿਆਲ ਮੈਂ ਨੈਚੁਰਲੀ ਸਵਾਲ ਵੀ ਮੇਰਾ ਫਰਜ਼ ਬਣਦਾ ਪੁੱਛਣ ਦਾ, ਆਪਣੇ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਹੈ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ?
Paji, to be honest, at the moment, our community is not aware that this would be rolled out.
Honey.
But as we progress, door knocking and stuff, I think so. Everybody actually wants weekly. None of our community members are happy. When you talk to them, you explain them, they said they don't want, because already people have so much on their plate. The country is coming out of the recession, lot of other factors as well. And this is the least thing people want on their plate, is to worried about rubbish. That's the least thing people should be worried about in their life. People are saying when they pay their rates, when they pay everything, why would they move to fortnightly instead of keeping it weekly? So our community, most of 99.9% wants to stick to weekly rubbish.
Amazing. Just on that, Daniel, I mean, what will happen if you have more waste while this trial is going? You imagine, you got a big family. Suddenly, hang on, after the second week, well, this is not working. What do you do?
Well, I tell you what, a lot of people will unfortunately do, and that's dump their rubbish. And that's a concern. Look, that part of the justification for this, when this debate happened late last year, was they conducted a trial of 10 families in my ward, Monterey and Papakura, larger families, 10 families over 10 weeks, with the proposition that they move from weekly to fortnightly, and that they receive information and encouragement to reduce their waste. Actually, what we found out is that over the course of that 10-week period, 5 of the families opted out. A 50% fail rate. I think that to go to a trial based on such scant information, full of aspiration, but without the comfort that we actually can make this work in a way which is convenient to people, I think is a risk. I think it will generate greater fly tipping. And the reality is that fly tipping offends everybody else in the street.
Absolutely.
And so you can't escape it. And I don't want our community to be a dirty community. I want our community to be a quiet, peaceful community where people have convenience and enjoy their lives.
Just out of curiosity, Daniel, how long will this trial run for?
Well, the final design and scope of this is to be approved, but the advice we received is that you'd probably be looking at about maybe up to 10,000 households across the Auckland region for a trial lasting approximately up to a year.
Oh, wow.
And I think, wow, that's an awful lot of inconvenience over a long period of time for the unlucky few. And this would be a precursor to a permanent region-wide fortnightly collection service for the Auckland region. And I think that your listeners need to be aware of this, and they need to register to vote, and they need to become very familiar with those people who have a strong view about this, who are standing for council and local boards everywhere, and tell the mayor as well and say, look, we, the people, want our weekly rubbish collection service, and we want you to back that.
Demographically, Daniel, and in terms of the economic gearing, we are a working class, suburbs.
Mhm.
And to now service our mortgages where average household where we're sitting in Papatoe, you're paying over $1 million for a 3-bedroom and just a small land up to 500 to 600 square meters. So to service that, there are families increasingly coming together to actually buy a house. So there are families living within a house, and this is very average. I can say this, with a firm insight. I've door knocked in this part of the world, and I've seen this from house to house, that the rooms are actually, in fact, separated just to kind of, accommodate families so they can actually bridge a mortgage together. This can play havoc.
Yeah, look, I believe that people need to get onto the property ladder. I want people to own a home and to pay a mortgage, and people make big sacrifices to do so. Often that involves households becoming crowded, and people need to be able to live in a sanitary environment, which is why their rubbish needs to be collected, and it needs to be collected frequently. So I am surprised that I was the only South Auckland councillor who argued and voted those values. I hope that there will be more people after the next election who will reflect those same values, because I want to trip up that trial, and I do not want to see a permanent region-wide fortnightly option. I want the retention of the weekly service, which incidentally, Navtej, is what the majority of the submitters themselves said. I wish the council would listen to the people.
Marshal, ਜਦੋਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਭਾਰਤੀ ਮੂਲ ਦੇ ਲੋਕ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਡੋਰ ਨੌਕ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇਸ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪ੍ਰਪੋਜ਼ਲ ਆ ਰਿਹਾ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਦੱਸਦੇ ਆ, ਤੇ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਕਿ ਬਹੁਤਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਨਹੀਂ ਪਤਾ, ਫਿਰ ਜਦੋਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਤੇ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦਾ ਰਿਐਕਸ਼ਨ ਆ ਰਿਹਾ, ਮੈਨੂੰ ਥੋੜਾ ਖੁੱਲ ਕੇ ਦੱਸੋ.
Their first reaction is, what is this? Why we are getting trialed out for this thing? We don't want to be getting trialed out for this thing. It's the awareness, and as Daniel raised, is when these voting comes in, they need to select the right team. The right team who are on their doors, who are listening to their concerns, and who are raising it to the mayor. Because then if you select the wrong team, then you have to face circumstances like this, like fortnightly rubbish. I'm telling you, I have door knocked so many houses, so many streets. Not only our community, the other community also don't want fortnightly rubbish. People don't want fortnightly. There's a lot of other ways you can teach people, you can educate people, but trialing out fortnightly rubbish, especially in South Auckland, it's a worst decision. I'll stay in Weymouth and we get a rubbish picked up today. You go past those streets and you can't even close the lid. The bin is overflow because there's so much rubbish. Leaving behind that, we also have dumping issue in Manureva. That's also the other issue which we face while door knocking. People raise a lot of concerns about door knock, about what do you call rubbish all over the place. This is because those bins are so small. We got a families of people staying around 8 to 10 people in one household, and imagining you getting your rubbish picked up after fortnightly. Where is that rubbish gonna go? It's gonna be on the streets, and who would be clearing out there? Again, that will be coming back to council, because dumping is cleared by council or other like people like us sitting on the beautification trust. We have to go there, pick up those rubbish.
So thank you, Marshal. Daniel, the council says, look, if it overflows, we will give you 240 litres. That's not bad, right?
Well, actually that's not strictly accurate.
Okay.
The council will offer the bigger bin option to the ratepayer who chooses to pay for it,
Oh.
which means that the landlord who doesn't agree to that is not going to be obliged to pay for it. Their tenants don't pay the rates directly, so the tenants don't get to say. And therein lies the problem, that the choice is available, but only to those people who are the ratepayers, and many of our families are not the ratepayers. Many of our families live, for example, in Kainga homes, and we've had great difficulty in persuading Kainga to offer the 240-litre wheelie bin, the bigger bin option, to their 3-bedroom tenancies in South Auckland at the moment. And we haven't even begun to look at the trial for fortnightly. So the risk there is immense. And I think that the more people look at the scheme, the less they'll like it. I don't like it, and I don't think we should go there. But as I said, I am disappointed I was the only South Auckland councillor who reflected those values.
Yes. Daniel, I guess, just reading through the material that is available online, Mrs. Sood, who is the waste manager, she says, well, the research from here, this is her quote, and abroad shows that moving to fortnightly rubbish collections motivates people to optimize the use of their curbside, the 3 bins. So, so the landfill, she says, we are trying to bring awareness and get people to, I guess, condition themselves to this process. So what do you say to that?
Like Pearl, as I do, and I do like her very much, and I've got great respect for her, but fundamentally I disagree with the proposition that we motivate our community by denying them services. I think you motivate the community by instilling confidence in them that you've got the base level of services right to reflect what the community is saying, and the community is saying they want weekly. If you want to add in additional new services such as the food scraps bin, fine. But you can't, in my view, just compel people to change. Compel, change. No, Tej, I'm a person who believes in giving people choice.
Yes.
I don't believe in denying people basic services in order to achieve a philosophical view that I have that other people don't necessarily share. It's a different worldview to some of my colleagues.
Indeed. And I guess, well, in the worldly order, Daniel, the carbon footprint, and the sustainability, I suppose expectations, all of that are playing a big role globally, and New Zealand isn't, we are not living in a silo. So, there'll be a lot of people who will say to that, look, eventually we have to, buckle up and be part of the global, change that's coming. What do you say to that?
Well, it's inconvenient for my opponents to admit this, but the councillor who shepherded the green food scraps bin out into the community first was me.
Right.
Because it happened in Papakura first. So I stand by my record of giving people choice, which is fundamental. Yes, I believe that people should take their food scraps and deposit it in that green bin and put that bin out there to be collected so it can be diverted from landfill, instead be used to generate energy. I agree with that. But I think that you have to give people choice and add to their options as opposed to unilaterally changing the way in which they will live. It's a different approach. I am absolutely keen to invest in technologies that reduce our carbon footprint, but I'm absolutely opposed to denying my constituents the services they need in order to keep their community clean.
judging the success, the evaluation process of this when the trial will go on. So what would that be?
I'm not sure, and that's half the problem, because I thought adopting a trial option based on a 10 families over 10 weeks with a 50% fail rate was it's a no-brainer. It didn't work, did it?
Absolutely.
But the majority of my colleagues probably looked a bit embarrassed but went ahead anyway. I don't think they should have. This is going to be a very contentious issue. People need to be aware of it. All communities need to be aware of it, because a permanent fortnightly service will affect everybody, and they'll be reminded every single week about their rubbish piles, because each week those piles will grow bigger and they won't be collected until a fortnight's time, and that's a concern.
Marshal, naturally ਦੇਖੋ ਆਪਾਂ ਨਵੇਂ ਮਾਈਗ੍ਰੈਂਟ ਬਹੁਤ ਸੈਟਲ ਹੋਏ ਆ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੰਟੈਸਟ ਐਤਕੀ ਵਾਰ ਕਰਨਾ। ਸੋ ਬਹੁਤ ਲੋਕ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਮੁਲਕਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਆਪਾਂ ਆਏ ਆ, ਉੱਥੇ ਇਹ ਸਿਸਟਮ ਸ਼ਹਿਰਾਂ ਥੋੜ੍ਹਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਛੱਡ ਕੇ ਇੰਨਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਾਰਗੁਜ਼ਾਰ। ਸੋ ਮੇਰਾ ਨੈਚੁਰਲੀ ਸਵਾਲ ਹੈ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਤੱਕ, ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਕਿ ਆਪਣੀ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈ ਇਸ ਇਸ਼ੂ ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਇਲੈਕਸ਼ਨਾਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਆ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ ਡਿਸੀਜਨ ਲੈਗੀ ਕਿ ਕੌਣ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਖੜਾ, ਕੌਣ ਕਿਸ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਨਹੀਂ?
ਹਾਂਜੀ ਭਾਜੀ, ਜਿਵੇਂ ਕਿ ਆਪਾਂ ਅਵੇਅਰਨੈਸ ਕ੍ਰੀਏਟ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਐਜ਼ ਵੀ ਡੋਰ ਨੋਕਿੰਗ, ਰਿਮਾਈਂਡਿੰਗ ਪੀਪਲ, ਐਂਡ ਵੀ ਗੋਣਾ ਬੀ ਗੋਇੰਗ ਟੂ ਸਿੱਖ ਟੈਂਪਲਸ every temple and remind people. And that's part of the duty when we door knocking, is to remind people that if you don't select a Manureva action team, you might end up getting into fortnightly rubbish, which no one wants. That's why they need to select the people who stands with the community, for the betterment of the community, and who wants to keep their community neat and tidy. That's why we are creating awareness. We are educating people at the same time as well. But as I've said before, we have door knocked a lot of houses, and nobody has even said to me that they want to stick to fortnightly rubbish. And that not only goes to our community, it goes to the wider community as well. There has been a lot of posts on the social media, and this little bit stress as well going on people's mind is why we have to go to this trial when there's already a failure. As Daniel said, 50% of the people actually opted out for the trial. So that clearly indicates us that nobody is ready for this. There's a lot of other ways where you can educate people, but imposing something like this on getting onto a fortnightly rubbish would create a lot of stress in people's mind.
Can it where from now, from here on, what do you think? Just looking at it, say in a logical, steps from here, what are the options available for an average punter out there?
Well, looking forward, what will happen is that next year, 2026, Council will agree and sign off the final design of a trial if it wishes to pursue that. And that will last for a period of time. And then at the end of that, a vote will be taken during the next term of Council about whether we should have a weekly or a fortnightly service. The options now are to stop this as soon as possible or to do nothing. And my view is that whilst I am not running for mayor and I'm not involved in other wards across the Auckland region, my plea to your listeners is to start to think about what the candidates, what your councillors, what the mayor is saying, and start telling them, if you don't support a fortnightly option, to reflect to your civic leaders the need to retain the weekly service. Because I think that there is quite a degree more support politically around the table for the retention of the weekly option, but people have to be brave enough to back it. I am. I would like more friends there who support my view, and I would like strong advocacy from our local boards to reflect that too.
Indeed. Well, great discussion. I think a lot of our listeners would have really got insight into what's truly going on and why they need to weigh up their options and how critical it is. I mean, it's not a trial. I mean, trial to me is 3 months or 4 months. This is a year. I wouldn't even call it a trial to begin with. That seemed to be actually, exaggeration of the actual word itself. Would you agree, Daniel?
Oh, look, it feels to me like the trial's over, the sentence is beginning, and that's not particularly. Look, I just shudder to think about selecting the chosen people who will be the unlucky ones for this. I said, don't even contemplate my constituency being singled out for this trial, because I know of no neighbourhood in my ward of Manurewa or Papakura that wishes to be party to this.
Indeed. Thank you, gentlemen. And Marshal, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਖੀਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਚ ਕੋਈ ਮੈਸੇਜ ਆਪਣੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਲਿਸਨਰਸ ਨੇ ਸ਼ੋਤੇ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਤੱਕ ਦੇਣਾ ਚਾਹੋਗੇ?
थैंक यू सो मच नतेज भाजी. मैं एक ही रिक्वेस्ट करना चाहना है कि please get your vote registered. It's very important to cast your vote, and it's very important to cast the right candidates. We have a right team, Manurewa Action, which shows the diversity. What is Manurewa would be in future. So select those candidates who will retain your weekly rubbish, who will ensure your communities are neat and clean, who will ensure there's no roaming dogs around the streets, who will retain your weekly rubbish. So please ਹੱਥ ਜੋੜ ਕੇ ਇਹ ਬੇਨਤੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਆਪਦੀ ਵੋਟ ਰਜਿਸਟਰ ਕਰਾਓ. ਜੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਵੋਟ ਰਜਿਸਟਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਾਉਣੀ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਤੇ ਪਲੀਜ਼ ਕੰਟੈਕਟ ਮੀ. I will help you to get your vote registered. But in the coming elections, our numbers have gone up, and it's the right time to show your support for the right people. Once again, thank you so much, Navtej Paji. Thank you, Radio Spice, and thank you thank you to Daniel as well for doing the hard work, especially on the streets, and also listening to the concerns of the constituents who stays in Manurewa.
ਲਾਈਵ ਇੰਟਰਵਿਊ ਹੁਣੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ ਡੈਨੀਅਲ ਨਿਊਮਨ ਕਾਉਂਸਲਰ ਨੇ ਪਪਕੂਰਾ ਤੇ ਮਾਨਰੇਵਾ ਤੋਂ, ਤੇ ਮਾਰਸ਼ਲ ਵਾਲੀਆ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਟੀਮ ਮੈਂਬਰਾਂ ਨੇ ਐਕਸ਼ਨ ਟੀਮ ਦੇ. ਸੋ ਆਉਂਦੀਆਂ ਇਲੈਕਸ਼ਨਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਬਹੁਤ ਵੱਡਾ ਮੁੱਦਾ ਰਹੇਗਾ. ਇਸ ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਪਣੀਆਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਵੱਡੀਆਂ ਫੈਮਿਲੀਜ਼ ਨੇ, ਨਾਰਮਲੀ ਆਪਾਂ ਜਾਣਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਸੁੱਖ ਨਾਲ ਅਸੀਂ ਮਿਹਨਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਲੋਕ ਆ, ਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਰੱਜ ਕੇ ਮਿਹਨਤ ਕਰਦੇ, ਰੱਜ ਕੇ ਖਾਂਦੇ ਹਾਂ. ਤੇ ਕਿਸੇ ਵੇਸਟ ਦੇ ਪੱਖੋਂ ਜੇ ਹੁਣ ਘਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪਿੱਛੇ ਬਿਨ ਭਰ ਗਿਆ, ਹੁਣ ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਕਿੰਨਾ ਕੁ ਮੁਸ਼ਕ ਆਪਣੇ ਰਬਸ਼ ਬਿਨਾਂ ਚੋਂ ਆਉਣ ਲੱਗ ਪੈਂਦਾ. ਮੈਨੂੰ ਤਾਂ ਸੋਚ ਕੇ ਕਿ ਉਹਦੇ ਲਾਗਿਓਂ ਦੀ ਲੰਘਦੇ ਆ ਸਾਡਾ ਕੀ ਬਣੂਗਾ 2 ਹਫ਼ਤਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ. ਬਾਕੀ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਦੀਆਂ. ਇਸ ਇੰਟਰਵਿਊ ਨੂੰ ਇੱਥੇ ਹੀ ਫਿਨਿਸ਼ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ. Once again, thank you, gentlemen, for taking time to come to the studio. This interview will be replayed for those who actually joined us halfway through or have not been able to watch this in the first instance. So Radio Spice ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੀ ਇੰਟਰਵਿਊ ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਅਵੇਅਰਨੈਸ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਪੇਸ਼ ਕਰਦੇ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ. ਇਸ